On this episode of Western Door Paranormal, the WDP team stays in their own backyard of Buffalo, New York to investigate the historic Buffum Street Cemetery. The historic Buffum Street in South Buffalo near the West Seneca city line is the location of the Buffum Street Cemetery. The grounds of the cemetery, now known as Indian Park, was a part of a much larger Indian village, and it may also have been the site of the Longhouse of the Senecas. The site until 1842 had been known as the Buffalo Creek Reservation. The growth of the city of Buffalo, however, began to encroach on the burial ground itself. There were a lot of important Senecas buried in the cemetery, but chief among them was the great orator Red Jacket, buried near a white oak, was one of its most famous residents. Another notable resident was Mary Jemison, the white woman of the Genesee, who rested under a black walnut tree. The city's encroachment and the deterioration of the stones of the famed residences of Red Jacket and Mary Jemison prompted their removal to other burial sites. Mary Jemison moved to Letchworth State Park, and Red Jacket, whose wishes stated that he not be moved at all, actually was moved twice. Once to a secret location, and finally to Forest Lawn Cemetery. The site fell eventually into the hands of the Buffum family, hence the street's name. The Buffums farmed the land. The site was then sold to the Strichter family in the mid-1800s. Both families knew about the cemetery. Eventually, the cemetery was sold to the New York State Preservationist Society. Okay, now we're here at the Forest Lawn Cemetery, and this is actually the final resting place of Red Jacket, who was reinterred from the Buffum Street Cemetery in South Buffalo, New York. Now, he wasn't alone, and there are several other Native Americans here that were also reinterred from Buffum Street that came with him, although they really didn't get the treatment that Red Jacket got, because he was moved from at least 3 different places, and this is coming from someone who didn't want to be removed once. Is it any wonder that he's at unrest? But I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to the other Native Americans here who are very important dignitaries in their own right that actually were also moved from the Buffum Street Cemetery. What we have here is Eli S. Parker. He was a member of General Grant's staff. He was there at the surrender at Appomattox. His Native American name is Doniho Genwa. And I really hope that I'm pronouncing these actual Native American names correctly. Here is Gonan Dachi. They called him Destroy Town. I can only imagine why. Huigen Guato, the young king. Sagoyi Wata. Now that's actually the Native American name for Red Jacket. Gawanda Wana, Captain Pollard. Jisjaka, Little Billy. Hano Jakwa, Tall Peter. And Hutgo Sandone, Louis Bennett, also known as Deerfoot. He was the famous Seneca Indian runner. I wonder if he was one of the Native American runners that was actually part and responsible for the Buffalo Curse. Also here at Red Jacket's final burying site, it is said that Red Jacket often returns just to check things out. So if you're here and you see a Native American in a red British coat, that might just very well be Red Jacket himself. Okay, here at Letchworth State Park is one of Buffum Street Cemetery's more famous reinterments that I talked about before. This is actually the final resting place of Mary Jemison. Mary Jemison was known as the White Woman of the Genesee. Now, she was actually abducted during an Indian incursion into a village, which was common practice at that time for them to actually take the children and raise them on their own. Now, there are a lot of legends here about this particular gravesite with Mary Jemison. Is Mary Jemison the white lady that is sometimes actually seen around this particular cemetery plot? Well, that, I'm afraid, is going to be an investigation for another day. The next chapter in the cemetery's history involves the Mount Morris Dam project. The dam was constructed between 1948 and 1952 to control flooding caused by the Genesee River. This construction caused the displacement of an Indian burial ground. The remains were exhumed and moved to the Buffum Street Cemetery. The construction of the dam and the desecration, so to speak, of the Indian graveyard has a harrowing tale of its own. The Indians lobbied against the removal, but ultimately lost the battle. A shaman put a curse on the project, and civil engineer divers for a long time would not enter the water after witnessing large, ominous shapes swimming within. Is Mount Morris Dam itself haunted? That also is an investigation for another day. In 1873, New York State removed all the remains from the park to various cemeteries. In all, 700 exhumations took place. What remains today is the Seneca Indian Park. It is located on the left side as you travel down Buffum Street. It is one of the few known ancient earthworks still intact in western New York. The mound is so sloping and shallow that it could be mistaken for a natural rise. There is paranormal activity associated with the cemetery, as some elders believe that not all the bodies were removed intact, and this would certainly stir up spirits. The homes in the direct area report ghostly activity, and dogs occasionally snarl and act aggressively around the cemetery, as if reacting to an unseen energy. Very few children will play in the park. You know, I'll never forget the very first time I actually set foot in the Buffum Street Cemetery. I did the research, and it took me a little bit to figure out where it was because I was new, but me and the wife came in here and did a little walk around. When I first came in here, I definitely felt like, I don't know, like I wasn't wanted. Now, there could be a couple of reasons for that. One thing I really believe is Red Jacket may or may not still be here because of the removal of his bones against his wishes. Now, there was a caretaker who took care of the cemetery, and he had this thing about white people because his family was sold into slavery and he had a grudge against them. And he had a huge problem with people of white descent coming into the cemetery. So is he still here? And does he object to our presence here in the cemetery? Well, that's what hopefully we're going to find out tonight. We were also here the one time we got the cold spots in the middle of the summer, and we did a lot of photography and got a lot of orbs. There was even a time we came here and we literally were seeing shadow people darting from tree to tree. Now, the wife and I are here tonight, and we're going to see if we can pick up on any of this activity through our equipment, through EVPs and video, and some photography. So, a few times. Now, this last time we did get a few EVPs. Some that were too light and we really couldn't use them. Other ones stood right out. And what I said before about the fact that most of the EVPs we did get were actually Native Americans. Which goes, you know, when you investigate a place like that, you're not always going to get hello, goodbye, and whatever in English. These were actually Native American Indians. We didn't get too much in the way of pictures, but I recommend checking out the Buffum Street Cemetery. It's one of the few remaining Indian earthworks in the area. Okay, this first EVP, I really don't know exactly what it's saying, but it definitely sounds Native American. Go ahead and check it out.